Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment. I have a special guest today, Jerry Zehr. Is it Jerry?
Yes, there.
And I am going to let him tell his story. I always say that everyone has a story, and I am very interested in Jerry's. He is going to introduce himself and the things that he do, and then, as normal, we'll go back and try and start from his beginning, see what propelled him to pursue the path that he has pursued today and the accomplishment that he has achieved. So, Jerry, how are you? Welcome to Threads.
Well, thank you. And I'm doing well, and I appreciate your inviting me to be here with your listeners. And
I
I
thank
think
you
you
so
have
much.
a wonderful podcast, and I hope we have a great conversation that people will engage in.
I look forward to it. So, tell us about yourself and what you're doing, and then we'll go back, as I mentioned, from the beginning.
Well, I actually just retired as a parish
Hmm.
minister. I was a minister in a church for 36 years. And now I have this book that I've been working on for the last 2 years, Labor of Love. And
Hmm.
my whole purpose was of writing the Peacemaker's Path was because I always believe we have so much more in common than what divides us. But most of us have never read the Quran or the Sikh scriptures or Baha'i scriptures. Are they Hindu or Buddhist scriptures? And so my
Hmm.
purpose was to help people be exposed to these six themes that I have created, and really not created, but I have kind of developed and researched that are in all of our world religions. And those six themes I've now writing about, and then I have scriptures from the faith traditions that kind of enhance that topic, and then a prayer from a faith leader. So it's set up
Hmm.
for 40 days, like a devotional, where you could read one day for 15 minutes, um, and then, or you could read the whole book together, or by sections, by every week. So it's set up for really people though to be open to seeing maybe and develop, enhance their own spirituality. Not to say that you have to give up whatever your faith tradition is, but or your
Hmm.
own perspective of life and God, but to expand it and to see how much more we have in common.
Excellent. I can't wait to get into that conversation because Jerry had sent me a preview of his work, and it's actually a lot of the topics that I talk about personally is what he talks about. So I can't wait for us to get into that piece of it. Can you tell us if is there any ministry or any other things that you do other than? And congratulations, by the way, on your retirement. So so tell us about other ministries or any other type of things that you do currently, as well as working
Well,
on the book.
yes, I'm involved with the. It's called the Indiana Multifaith Network. I've kind of helped create
Hmm.
4 different interfaith organizations over the years, and this is the one that I've been working with for the last 2 years. And it's really a statewide network to kind of bring all of our interfaith organizations in the state of Indiana together. What's been exciting is
Okay.
that we are seeing a number of multi faith or interreligious or interfaith organizations, at least in the United States, are coming across very much in the United States. And the impact that these interfaith groups can have in a positive way of trying to build ways of peace and unity. Because right now, things, at least here in the United States, are very polarized. Where people are
Hmm.
angry and they're shouting at one another, but nobody's listening and nobody's really wanting
Yeah.
as much. There are many of us who want to find common ground, but that's not what the media is picking up on.
Yeah, yeah. And that is the battle that we have as far as being able to get the message out there that we are more alike than we are different. If we could focus on those, we will understand, and we have to come in an open mind to each other and to see. Because I remember I'm here and I sat down and I talked with someone in a mosque, and we were talking about the similarities between all the different religions and so forth. So I totally get it, and I'm glad that you are doing that. Or as I would say, you would say he's on the ground, working on the ground with this group. How long has it been in place?
Well, the interfaith, the network, the Indiana Multifaith Network,
Hmm.
has been for 2 years. I started doing interfaith ministry right out of seminary. So that's been 35 years ago. And back in
Wow.
1989, that was a time when just Jewish and Christians were having a hard time talking, let alone people of other faiths. I mean, you have to remember there was a period of time when Catholics and Protestants didn't marry, when people, did
Hmm.
not, come across. And so we have evolved, but we are slowly coming to understand it. And some of it is, as you said, if people have never met a Muslim or they've never met somebody who's Jewish and all they see is from the media, well, then you have a perception about those people. And now, you don't want to have anything to do with them. And then, like, you had a conversation with somebody in the mosque, you realize, wow, in fact, Muslims, they honor Jesus, they honor Mary, they're waiting for the second coming of Christ. Many of people don't
Hmm.
know that about Muslims, right? But
Yeah.
but we only think, we see things like when ISIS came. Everybody thought because of ISIS came wanting to kill all of the Westerns and masses, they thought, well, all Muslims were terrorists like ISIS. When in reality, there's 1.2 billion Muslims, and ISIS was only about 10,000. And the reality was, the ISIS were killing more Muslims than they were Christians, because they were killing people who didn't believe like them. And they perverted the scriptures of the Quran to justify their actions. And so now, people are trying to realize, and what we're wanting people to realize is that, in fact, the teachings of the Quran are much in line with the teachings of Jesus, as they are with Buddha and Hindu, but because it's hard to read the Quran, just like it's hard to read the Bible if you haven't read the Bible. And so I
Hmm.
wanted to help people be exposed to these scriptures and the themes of forgiveness, themes of reconciliation, of power of prayer. These are themes that I try to unpack in my book.
Excellent. So you have been doing this since you left seminary school, and
Yes.
you've been doing this for quite some time. And how has it looked like? What does it look like from the day that you first came out and you had this desire to get into the road of bringing the faiths together? How I know you touched a little on it, but if you can embellish a little more as to you mentioned the Jewish and the Protestants and stuff like that. Today we have so many different religions that are part of your group. How is it when you come to a meeting? How do you guys proceed? What happens in something like that?
Well, I think in some ways, some of it's coming to understand, because there's a lot of misconceptions about each other, and so it's hearing each
Hmm.
other's stories, getting to know each other, and once you start to understand aspects of the faith tradition, yes, there are some things that are different than each of us. We all have our own ways of worship, or maybe some of our different beliefs, wherein where in the Buddhist and the Hindu, they believe in reincarnation. Christians believe in a heaven. There are different points of view, but when we come together, we try to find understanding, and then we try to do things in the community. A good example.
Hmm.
So here was this synagogue in our city, and we're right out. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana, in a suburb in the
Hmm.
Midwest in the United States. And there was a 19-year-old boy and an 18-year-old girl who lived in a small town outside of the area. They had swastikas and Confederate flags in their house, in their little apartment. And they came over to the synagogue and spray painted swastikas all over the synagogue, trying to put fear in there and try to say, you Jews need to know your place, and we as Christians are the best, which is not really the
Hmm.
teaching of Jesus, but that was the Christian supremacist, the white supremacist mindset. Well, what happened was, that was on a Thursday evening. We spread the word out in social media that we were going to have a service of solidarity, and on Monday night at 7 p.m. Now, the amazing thing is, most people get home from work, they don't want to go out at night. 7 p.m. We didn't know how many people would show up. but we wanted to stand in
Hmm.
solidarity. And this temple only held 450 people in the synagogue. There was almost 1,000 people came together, people outside, people with their children who said, I want my children to see that we will stand for love rather than hatred. And the ripple effects of that type of experience, that ripple effect into our community, building bridges, building ways of connection with people of faith was so
Hmm.
powerful that we're still seeing the positive effects of
That is awesome. That is just a beautiful story to hear because I think we need the community to come together. The Bible has a verse. It says to love thy neighbor as thyself. And in the book that I had written about Threads of Enlightenment, I talk about the fact that we don't love our neighbors is simply because we don't love ourselves. And I know you had mentioned in your book, and I got a chance to get a copy of the new piece that you're working on. But the principles, I love the themes that you put together, the thoughtfulness in how you broke it down and laid it out. And I wanted to know if you can, if it's okay with you, to share some of those principles with the people because it's very important. What you're talking about awakening and all the different respecting others' beliefs and all these things that you touched about in your book. If you can pick and walk us through those principles so that we as people can begin to change our lives and maybe even start an organization like yours in their particular area. But if you can gather that information, help us out to learn about mindfulness, the gratitude, all these things that you talked about in the book. If you can take, I know you have 6 themes in there, if you could take your time and just walk us through the 6 themes in the book, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, and I probably can't go through all 6 of them, but let me just give
Yeah,
an
yeah.
example of
Hmm.
certainly the first one is walking the enlightened path. And that really is about our journey of self-exploration. And because your listeners already have connected with you, they're already open to the idea. Many times there are some folks who get set in their own beliefs and they don't want to change, they don't want to be open to a new perspective, and
Hmm.
that's what happens when you get ingrown and you get set in your own ways. You really limit your expansion and your whole sense of yourself. And so part of that for me was as I opened myself to understand about God, I had a new understanding of God than I did growing up. I mean, I grew up with an understanding of God like a being out there, kind of going to strike us down if we did something wrong, or that we would pray to God like
Hmm.
a Santa Claus. And now I've seen God in a much broader way. That God, as it says, God is spirit, and we know even in quantum physics, science is catching up with us spiritually, that there are many
Yeah.
dimensions of the universe. Energy
Hmm.
cannot be destroyed, but gets
Yeah.
manifested. And so, God, and maybe some people call it higher power, some people call it
Hmm.
Allah, ultimate consciousness, or just love. It is that
Hmm.
essence of the universe that has given us life, that when we connect with that, we now awaken to the divine within us and beyond us. Rather than God out there, I would encourage people that it begin with inside. And so you so correctly,
Yeah.
and I thank you for saying this about loving ourselves, because at first, if we aren't loving ourselves, we have nothing left to give. And part of that loving
Exactly.
ourselves is learning to trust ourselves, to listen.
Hmm.
It's interesting because, and I grew up with a very authoritarian situation, a very legalistic religion when I grew up, and that I left because I just never bought it. I never bought that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
the sense of God as a judging and the shame and guilt. But
Yes.
then all those thoughts that were in, and I call it the critic voice, it's that voice
Hmm.
from somebody in your past, maybe your parents or maybe society. For me, because my father was very driven, he had an 8th grade education. So he always felt inadequate, but he was successful in life and he was driven to
Hmm.
prove himself. So he was insecure, and he always said to me, Jerry, you're lazy. You have to get out there and do it and work. So I always thought I was lazy until finally I realized I'm not lazy. In fact, I can do this. But I had that critic voice inside saying, oh, you
Yeah.
can't do that. Oh, you're a screw up. You messed up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how we'll listen to that voice in our own mind and our brain more than we do a therapist or a good friend.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
always say, if you take that personality of that voice, that neurotics driven, doing that, and you make them into a person and you put them beside you, you'd go, why, that person is a judgmental, hard, mean, driven person. You want nothing to do with them. But
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
inside our own mind, those thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
we give air to them. And so,
Yes.
first, Dr. Bruce Lipton wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. And he talks about how your thoughts get manifested into your body and get manifested into
Mm-hmm.
your future. A lot of physical
Yes.
illness, as you know,
Yes.
gets
Mm-hmm.
manifested because of our anxiety, our fear, our bitterness, whatever things that we hold on to in our mind. And so I try to unpack that and help people learn about retraining our mind, retraining our thoughts, and what
Mm-hmm.
do we want to create and shape for our future.
When you were telling your story, you triggered a memory that I had because I believe everything you had said. Because as a child, we all have to. One of the things I tell people is that I did not become an adult until I was 30 something years old because I had separated the part of me to live for my parents because of those voices. I was acting and behaving to please my parents or just to, I was living for them. I wasn't living for me. And until I began to do that, then I began to grow and change in my mind state, my belief system. Everything began to blossom. But one of the stories that you had triggered was when I was a young man, I went out street witnessing. And we knocked upon the house of this lady, and she invited us to come in. And she had serious arthritis, and I mean crippling arthritis. You could see her fingers just totally a mess. And we got in there as a group of us. We got in there, and we she asked us to pray for her. And so we were about to pray for her, and I felt impressed in my spirit to said, "No, you have to forgive first." And so I said to
Mm.
her, you need to forgive because it was the unforgiveness that caused your arthritis to manifest. And that once you forgive, and I didn't at the time didn't know who she needed to forgive, but I'm telling her what I felt impressed. And I said, once you forgive, then your arthritis will disappear. You would be healed from it. She looked at me and she said, no. She said, I'm not going to forgive him. And I said, who's him? She said, my husband, because he cheated on me with my best friend. And I said, oh wow, is he here that we could talk to him and see what we can do here? She said, no, he's been dead for 20 years. And
Ah,
so I'm
ah,
looking at her, and I was flabbergasted. I was stunned that here was an opportunity for this woman to receive her healing. And you would think that someone would want that, being in that crippling state. And the piece that she needed to do was to forgive a dead husband. And she said no. And so, as you were saying, people need to start looking internally, and that's where the changes need to be made.
wow, that's a wonderful story and so accurate in that, that it is that inner work that we need to do. And in my 20s, I was very driven. I was very anxious, perfectionistic. And part of my
Hmm.
awakening, I think my father had a nervous breakdown at 52. And
Hmm.
I saw how that was unhealthy. And as I began my own spiritual journey inside, I wanted to change. I didn't want to be angry like him. I didn't want to have that temper. And I had to learn how to change some of that within myself. And forgiveness is another part of that. And you are so
Yeah.
right that if we aren't able to forgive somebody, or forgive ourselves, those things get stuck. And sometimes people, you know they just aren't in enough pain to want to change.
Hmm.
And I say to
I've
people,
seen
if
that.
you just take a step, open at beginning. And it's interesting, like forgiveness, because this is one of the most important spiritual principles. And I write about this a lot and help people as I've had to learn. I remember when I first started out of ministry, and a person who was really a good friend for me in the church, and he
Hmm.
was the person who had been the chair of the search committee, and we became friends. But because I crossed his best friend, and he had to choose sides because his best friend now was
Hmm.
angry at me, and so he chose him, and then he turned against me, and he used some things about me that he knew in my personal life that he shared with other people. Well, now I felt
Wow.
betrayed. I felt hurt.
Hmm.
And now he quit the church and he left and went on his way, but I'm hanging on to it. I'm thinking in my mind, like, how can I get back at him? How can I make him hurt like he hurt me? And I'd say to my wife, oh,
Yeah.
I want to pour sand in his gas tank. And my wife, oh, you aren't going to do that. I go, no, I'm not going to do it, but I want him to hurt. And what
Yeah.
happened was he left. He's now forget everything about me. But I'm still back in that moment in the past. And for a month, I couldn't sleep. It consumed me. And it wasn't until I
Hmm.
started saying, okay, how can I forgive him? Well, part of my forgiving him was trying to understand why he did what he did. And when I
Hmm.
could step back from it a little bit, and I realized he probably did this because his best friend was hurt. I did something to hurt him, and now he
Yeah.
felt loyalty to him. And once I got some perspective and I could actually have some compassion and say, okay, I didn't like what he did to me, but I can understand it. I began the forgiving process. And
Hmm.
then, as I could forgive him, I was released from my bondage of anger and hurt. So
That's beautiful.
I
I had
think,
the same conversation. Go
well,
ahead.
no, I think it's
I
right.
had the same
And
conversation with a man.
oh yeah.
Good. Yeah, same thing we talked about a few days
Well,
ago.
and I think also it's even harder sometimes to forgive ourselves than others. We
I
can
was going
forgive
to
somebody.
ask you
Oh, I
that.
understand you didn't mean that, but we can't forgive ourselves because we think I knew better. I should have done that. I
Hmm.
screwed up and I didn't, and there's that critic voice inside going, "Oh, you are a screw up. You can't do it." When in reality, we did the best we could. It's not like, "Oh, I got married and
Yes.
then got intentionally to get divorced." No, you
Hmm.
got married thinking you're going to do the best. It didn't work out, but you did the best you
Hmm.
could at that time. I didn't get that job only to get fired. No, and so there's part of that which I talk about being easy with ourselves, cutting ourselves some
Hmm.
slack, loving
Yeah.
ourselves, forgiving ourselves. And again, that's part of getting grounded, for me at least. It's taken me
Hmm.
where I could finally came to love myself, and then I could actually trust myself. I didn't have to just listen to what other people said. I started believing I do know what's best for Jerry. And then I
Yes.
got in touch with the divine. And when I'm in alignment
Hmm.
with myself and the alignment of the divine, I'm at peace. I'm at peace.
Absolutely, I agree. I wrote the same thing. And again, I spoke to a gentleman by the name of Tim Kellis, and he has the same principles about the forgiveness. We talked about the insights of forgiveness. People say, I forgive you, but yet they still harbor that emotional pain that goes with that. And until you release that emotional pain, you haven't really forgiven anyone. And I know that one of the hardest things that I personally and a lot of the people that I talk to that have started their path is that piece about forgiving themselves. That's the key, I believe, to the beginning of our path and our journey because that is so hard. And once you are capable and able to do that, Jerry, then you can forgive your wife. You can forgive anyone that has offended you. but no one has offended you more than you have offended yourself, because you carry this guilt and you wear it well. But until you sit down and have that conversation with yourself, the principle is this: to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, that verse, if practiced by any religious person, any religion, to love their creator and to love themselves, they can look at you and I, Jerry, and be able to function and, as you say, be able to accept us, be able to forgive us, be able to do all the things to begin that journey. Until they do that, they're still in bondage.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I loved in my research and expanding my own faith, and was as I read these from the different faith traditions, from different,
Hmm.
they were not all exactly the same, but they were similar. That theme of loving yourself is very
Yes.
strong in all of our faith tradition. Now, what happens, at least for me, I was grow up with this idea of loving others. Don't You shouldn't love yourself. That's
Hmm.
too prideful. You're self-centered. Well, that of
Yes.
course is not the teaching of Jesus, but that was our culture,
Hmm.
was to say, "Oh, you're not good enough. You you need to have this beauty agent. You need to do exercise. You need to lose weight." I mean, and so you feel inadequate. It's interesting because
Yes.
girls starting at the age of 12 start to feel that their bodies are inadequate. Girls at 12 years old
Hmm.
already have been so conditioned by our society that they are inadequate. So you're ingrained from outside sources. And part of what,
Yes.
as we can start to realize where those things are coming from, and can let go of them and say, no, I don't buy into that. And then as I can love myself and honor myself, then when people get upset, we don't get so defensive. I mean, I used to be, when I was insecure, somebody'd say to me, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." And then I'd go, "Well, I do know what I'm talking about. What do you mean?" Or they'd say, "Your point of view of this belief is wrong. You're going to go to hell." And I'd go, "What do you mean I'm going to go to hell? I know exactly." And then I'd get defensive. Well, now I don't get defensive. I mean, I know what I believe, I know who I am, and I'm going to just not take that personally from them. I'm going to be able to just let them have their point of view, but I don't have to take that in and harm me. So that's why I think it's important, as we love ourselves, that we can, that's at the core of being a peacemaker, or building peace and unity and having enlightenment, is working on that within ourselves. One of the other things that I think is so important is, as we love ourselves, as we work on those parts of ourselves, though it is to find that which can give us passion, something to do for our life, that we can engage in the world. And because when we're reaching out, as we're caring for other people, as we're working on sharing part of our life with others, that we become so much more enhanced and deepened and rewarded. And that's what I've realized, that in my life, it hasn't been about material things, but it's been about those things are of spiritual nature, relationships and love and beauty, and being able to carry those forth and finding those within my community and my world. External things do not define us. Your job doesn't define you. You are who you are. I am who I am. And when I come to love that, then I don't become defensive. I think, as I was maybe
Hmm.
saying a little earlier, how, when I was insecure in myself, people would say, "Oh, you're stupid. Your point of view is wrong. I disagree." And I get defensive because I wasn't secure. But when I'm secure in myself, and I trust and believe in who I am,
Yes.
then I don't take it personally. And that's a very important,
Personally,
I think,
yes.
lesson. Don't take it personally. That's that person's point of view, but I don't have to take that in, and they can have their point of view. It's fine. If you think I'm crazy, that's your point of view, but I know who I am.
I absolutely agree. I keep telling people, once you know who you are, anyone else's opinion of you doesn't really affect you at all. you know, that's once you realize that's their opinion, that's everyone is entitled to their opinion. There's nothing wrong with that for them to feel that way about you. But that's their opinion. I know who I am, And so I'm not offended by your opinion of me, but I will make sure that, I keep respecting you and protect myself from your opinion of me.
Well, and at least for as a guy, I think my identity was wrapped up in what I did. The first thing you say is, "Well, what do you do for a
Hmm.
living?" And I do this as
Yes.
a living. I'm an actor, or I'm a pipe fitter, or I'm a teacher. When in reality, that's not who I am. That maybe is what I do, but who I
Hmm.
am is much more than that. And I think when we can
Yes.
find our identity, and that takes some time. I mean, in my 20s and 30s and even my 40s, it was a process of moving to
Hmm.
that awakening. And so, as your people who are listening, they are on the journey too of enlightenment, and I applaud them. And what I have found that I would encourage them, and that I wish I had given to myself when I was younger, is some sense of
Hmm.
cutting some slack to myself, giving yourself
Yes.
some forgiveness, realizing you're not going
Hmm.
to do it all perfect, and you're going to do your best, and know that that's okay. I think sometimes we're harder on ourselves than we are on other people.
I absolutely agree. And Jerry, this has been absolutely great. I know you and we've gone past our 30 plus. And but what I want to do is you have a lot that I want to be able to bring you back if that's something you would be interested in.
I would
And
love to.
do you know when your book is going to be published? What's your
It's out
timetable for
right
that?
now. Yeah, it came out yesterday,
Okay.
so it's out there. And
Congratulations.
thank you. So it's the number one new release in Christian ecumenism. So that's very fun. But when I wrote the book, I mean, there were times when I
Hmm.
didn't know if anybody would read it, if I could get through it. And I just said, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this because it's something that I feel God has put on my heart to do. Whether people read it or not, I can't control that. But I just felt God's leading, and I wanted to honor that. And it's been a blessing, and I've already felt it's been people have shared from the book, and it's I think as we try to honor ourselves and honor God, we can't go wrong.
You can't go wrong. And I am going to plug your book. Everyone that is listening, I suggest you go and get a copy of the book. Where can they buy the book?
Well, the book is on Amazon or on my website, jerryzehr.com.
Okay,
And one of the things I found, a couple people have bought an extra copy to give to somebody who maybe was a friend who
that's it.
disconnected from
Hmm.
God, somebody who maybe gave
Yes,
up and felt like this is maybe the beginning step for them to reconnect, because it has a broader view of God that maybe that person had experienced bad experience in religion and just given up altogether.
excellent. I suggest that you do that. Buy a copy for a family member or a friend because I got a chance to read it and it is a powerful book. I think how Jerry put it together, the thoughtfulness that was placed in the book, how he broke it down, how he went in to explain. And I so appreciate reading that piece. And I'm going to buy a copy myself and make sure that I have it and give it to a couple of people that I know. For those who are listening, I suggest that you go and grab a copy and let's all support Jerry because I think he's onto something. And I actually believe what he's doing is excellent work. And I like to support everyone that is doing this type of work that we are a part of. So, Jerry, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us at Threads of Enlightenment. This is an open forum for you. We are going to definitely bring you back so that you can walk us through even more as you learn things that you can bring that insight and help us to learn with you as well.
Thank you.
All right, sir. You have a great day and thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone who's listening to this podcast, we hope to continually help you to learn how to embrace moments of darkness because it is in the darkness that we learn how to develop and use our abilities to truly see those parts of ourselves, often invisible to us, in the light. It becomes your responsibility to navigate through all of your trials, to find out who you truly are and begin your journey to loving yourself, which is possibly one of the most difficult things you will ever do in your life. To love yourself and to find the real you, but always remember to enjoy the journey. Thank you for coming by. Please subscribe, and if you can support us financially, we deeply appreciate it.